Welcome back to the sixth part of the Flutter YouTube Search tutorial course. In the previous part, we've added the search field and search bar into the app bar. Now that we have the search initiation sorted, we actually need to take that search data and display it to the user. For that, we are going to use a paginated ListView. Hello, welcome to ResoCoder. So as I said in the previous part, we've implemented this search bar. So when we search for ResoCoder and hit this green button on the keyboard right here, we are going to get some search results. And that's precisely what we are going to implement in this part. We are going to implement this paginated ListView. And then later on in this tutorial course, you're going to learn how to create this detail page. So definitely subscribe to this channel and also become a part of the notification squad by hitting the bell button so that you don't miss this video. But now let's get right to it. In the previous part, we have created search bar and also search field as their separate widgets, because it would be quite unruly to put all of this code contained in those two widgets into the search page itself. Now the search page is pretty clean, and that's how we want to keep our widgets. We don't want to overstuff them with unnecessary stuff. And excuse me if my voice becomes a little bit weird in this video because I'm a bit sick, but I'm gonna push through it anyway, right? Pushing through hard times. You can check out that video from the card in the corner to learn how to push through hard times as a developer. But now let's actually remove these two widgets, search bar and search field, into their own files. So we're going to create a new folder under search, so UI search. I like to call it widget. And now let's copy, or actually cut out, this search bar, and we are going to put it into its own separate file, which will be called how else than searchbar.dart. So let's move it over here and let's actually import the material package. So impm is the shortcut for me if you have the same kinds of shortcuts as I do for Visual Studio Code. And then we also want to move this search field. So let's cut that out. We want to cut out both search field stateful widget and also its state. That's pretty important because the widget without the state does basically nothing. So you have to cut out both of them. And now we're going to create another widget. So new file, search field .dart, and we are going to move that code over there. And also let's again import material, so impm, and we are good to go. Let's save all of this, but before we do that, we need to import Flutter BLoC.dart and also search BLoC.dart. So now search field does not have any errors. We can save that. Now in the search bar, we need to import search field. So that's no problem. And then inside search page, we can delete all of these empty lines at the bottom. And now let's just import search bar and we are good to go. We have tidy search page.dart file. Now let's actually run this app in the emulator so that we can see the changes in the UI as we are making them in real time. And while the app is launching, let's start coding. We are going to build the paginated ListView in a really similar way to how we built it in its separate own tutorial, which you can check out from the card in the corner. So if you want to learn about paginated ListViews in depth in Flutter, you can definitely check that out and you're going to learn a lot. So every ListView can have a scroll controller, and every paginated ListView needs to have a scroll controller. We need to create it under the search BLoC field, and scroll controllers do one important thing, and that is that they can pass us some information about the current scroll state of the ListView. For example, how much space is at the bottom of the ListView. So basically, if we have scrolled all the way down or not, and all of that kind of data, and we need that data to initiate the fetching of the next page of the YouTube search data. So that's why we need scroll controller. And it's gonna be just simply equal to scroll controller. Now we can move over to the scaffold, and currently we have only an app bar here, but we want to add the body element to the scaffold, and the body will be a block builder, and block builders can obtain the current state from the block which is emitted, and then operate with that state and display a different kind of UI based on that state. So for example, if we are loading data, we are going to display a circular progress indicator, but if we have already fetched that data and the fetch was successful, we are going to display the list itself. Otherwise, if the fetch was not successful, we are going to display an error message, and so on. And I have a separate tutorial on BLoC library, which you can check out from the card in the corner, where you're going to be taken through this block builder really in depth. So now this block builder needs to have specified a block, and the block is search block. Here we cannot use the block provider off and specify that we want to get the search block like we are doing in search field here, right? We can do this in search field because we are inside a nested widget. But if you are not inside a nested widget, and search page is not a nested widget because the search block is declared and defined right over here inside the search page itself. So if you are in the same widget as in which you actually create the block, you have to specify search block directly and not just get it from the block provider. That's because inherited widgets work only down the widget tree. So block is search block, and we also need to specify the builder, and the builder is a function which gets a context and also a state of type search state. And over here we simply want to check that if state that is initial, and there's something wrong here, yeah, it's dynamic. We actually need to specify that this state is of type search state. And once we have that, and let's import search state, and now we can check for is initial here. So if it is initial, we want to display a centered message, and that centered message will look something like not like this, because currently we have broken the app. But when we go to the finished app, when the search is not initiated, it's going to look like this: start searching. Then later on we are going to use this centered message also to display an error. So now it's the best to put it inside its own separate widget right off the bat. So under widget, let's create a new file, centered message. This can be a stateless widget. It's gonna be called centered message. And now this child will actually not be of type widget, but it will be of type string message. And then also final icon data icon, because we want to display some icon inside the centered message. Let's also import material.dart. Now inside the constructor we are gonna take in this dot message and then this dot icon, and let's actually make these things here required. Now let's just remove child from the container so that this code can be nicely formatted, and let's make these message and icon required. This means that we are going to get a warning if we do not pass these two parameters to the constructor. So require here and required for the icon as well. Now let's actually save this centered message, and let's go over to search page.dart, and if we are search state initial, in fact, we wanna return centered message. And let's also import that class over here. And we're going to pass in that the message is start searching. And also that the icon will be icons. So material icons dot on demand video. That's a nice icon for a YouTube search app. And now currently you are not gonna see any of that when we switch to our app, which is currently in development, but we are at least no longer getting that we have returned null from a builder, but we currently don't see anything. That's because centered message is currently only a wrapped container. We need to change that, and so we are going to change this container to be actually a center widget. Now the icon is not fully opaque, so the child of the center widget will be opacity. And I just love this Flutter layering system because you can basically build anything with just layers of widgets, and you don't need to do any special kind of trickery to style these things to set the opacity. It's really awesome that you can do this in Dart code. I just love Flutter. That's really amazing, this framework. But anyway, opacity will be 0.5. And now we actually need to make something of opacity 0.5. So obviously we are going to pass in a child widget to this opacity widget, and it's gonna be a column because we want to display things under each other. So now let's save it, and we still cannot see anything because the column is still empty. But as soon as we add some code to the column, we are in fact going to see something. The children of this column will be an icon, and that icon will hold our icon, which was passed to the constructor here. And also the size, we want to set it ourselves, will be 40. So now let's actually take a look at how it looks like, and you can immediately see that, yeah, we are displaying something, but that something, that icon, is not displayed correctly because we want to have it centered. Aren't we in fact inside a center widget? Yes, we are, but this column takes up the whole height of this scaffold space. And in order to change that, we actually need to set the column's main axis size to be main axis size.min, and now it's going to set its size according to how little it can actually set. So because we have only one icon in there, the size of the whole column will be actually the size of the icon, and now the icon is properly centered. But obviously we don't want to leave it at icon here. We also want to add a text, and the text will have message here, which is also from the constructor parameter. And then we also want to style this text. And to style a text, we want to specify a text style, and this text style will have font size of 15, then also font style of font style dot italic, because that looks just cool, and then font weight, we want to make it a bit bigger, or actually fatter, so to say. So we are going to set it to font weight bold, and now let's actually format this so we can see properly on our screen. And now when we go over to the emulator, you're going to see a nicely looking centered message. Now let's implement the other states so we can close off this centered message.dart. And now if state is loading, we want to display a circular progress indicator. So again, we want to center that widget. So center, and its child will be simply circular progress indicator. So that's pretty simple. And now comes the main part. So if state.is successful, we want to display the list. So for that, we are going to have a separate function. But even now we can implement what's going to happen if the state is not successful. So else, we again want to return centered message, and the message will be state.error, and then also the icon will be icons.error outline. If state is successful, we want to return a result list, and for that we are going to create a separate function under this build scaffold function. So it's gonna be returning widget, and its name will be build result list, and it's gonna take in a search state, And from here, we want to return notification listener. And this notification listener will get scroll notifications. So we want to define even that. And this notification listener will want to get notifications from a list view. So we need to specify it as a child. And we are going to build our list view by list view. And we want to use the builder. Now this builder takes in item count. And we're going to have to calculate this item count ourselves. Because how is that paginated list view actually going to work? Well, if there is in fact a next page, so when I search for resocoder and there is a next page, we are going to put a circular progress indicator at the bottom. So if there is a next page, we want to have one item more than are the actual items length from that particular search page, right? So we have this progress indicator at the bottom. And then when we get a scroll notification that we have hit the bottom, we're going to load the next page. We're going to remove that circular progress indicator from the element at which it currently is. And we are going to move it to the currently last element and so on until we hit the complete end of that list. And at that point, we are going to just completely remove that search or actually loading indicator. Because of that, we are going to create a function returning an integer called calculate list item count. We're going to put it below build result list, and here we want to pass in search state, and if we have reached the end of results, we simply want to return the true length of search results. Otherwise, to add that one circular progress indicator at the bottom, we are going to return one more than is the true length of search results. So now let's call this calculate list item count from here. So we want to pass in the search state. Actually, we can rename this search state to just state. And also let's make this function private actually, so that we cannot call it from other widgets, because it doesn't even make sense to call it from other widgets. And now we need to specify the controller for our list view, and the controller will be nothing else than the scroll controller, which we have defined at the top of this search page widget. Before we handle the actual building of the list items in the list view through a builder, we need to handle scroll notifications so that we can actually fetch the next result page. For that, we need to specify on notification for this notification listener. And whenever a notification is passed, we want to handle it in its own separate function called handle scroll notification. We're going to put it below calculate list item count, and handle scroll notification will get a scroll notification object, and it's going to check if notification is in fact scroll and notification. And then we are going to also use the scroll controller to double check basically if the extent after, so basically if the space below the last item inside the list view is 0, so we are in fact at the complete bottom of the list view. Then if these two conditions are met, we're going to actually fetch next result page from the search block, and then we're going to return false. That's just so that we can see it in the documentation. Return true to cancel the notification bubbling, return false to allow the notification to continue to be dispatched to further ancestors. So we just return false so that if there are some ancestors of this widget, so widgets above it, we are going to pass that notification even to them. We currently don't have any ancestors, but hey, it's not gonna break anything. So we wanna call this handle scroll notification from a notification. Actually, we do not wanna call it, we just wanna pass it in as a function reference here. And now let's move on to the item builder of the list view builder. So item builder gets a build context and also an integer index, and we wanna pass it into its own function. from which we are going to return that if index is greater or equal than state dot search results dot length, not last but length, then we wanna build loader list item because we are in fact in this +1 range, and this +1 length is for that loader list item, for that circular progress indicator. So that build loader list item function is gonna be pretty simple. We are just going to return a simple center widget containing circular progress indicator. So now we can just add a question mark here and return build loader list item if that condition is met. Otherwise, we wanna return something else, and that something else will be build video list item card. Currently, we do not have this function, but we are going to add it in just a bit. We wanna pass in the state dot search results, get the item at the index, which is currently displayed in the list view, and then we again also want to get the snippet because that's where the most of the data is contained. And now let's actually implement this build video list item card function. So this function will return a widget and it's gonna take in search snippet. Let's call it video snippet. And let's import search snippet here. We are going to import the whole model search.dart actually. And from here we wanna return card. This card will hold a column. And let's actually give this column some padding. So let's add padding here through quick actions of VS Code. And let's put a semicolon at the end. And now this column's children will be image.network because we want to get it from network. And we need to pass in the source of that image, which is contained in video snippet .thumbnails.high because we want to get the highest quality, and then the URL itself. And let's see how it will look like right now. So if we search for something through our current app, for example, again, ResoCoder, and search for it, we return null because we haven't yet called this build result list function from state is successful. So we want to return build result list, which gets in a state. So let's pass that in as well. And now let's save it, and we're going to see that we finally have something in the UI, but it doesn't look all that great, but the pagination at least works. So we know that we have done something right, but we still need to work on this UI a bit. We can change this awfulness, these black bars around each of these images, by changing the aspect ratio of the image, because currently it's somehow trying to make a square image, but that image should not be a square image because every single thumbnail of a video on YouTube is basically in 16:9 ratio. So we need to add, who would have guessed it, an aspect ratio widget. Yes, in Flutter everything is a widget. So we want to wrap this image with aspect ratio, and we're going to set the aspect ratio to be 16/9. Now when we save this and take a look, it's gonna look better, but it's still kind of weird, isn't it? Well, that's because that we need to set fit of this image to be boxFit.cover, and now this image will be stretched actually to cover the whole space provided by this aspect ratio calculation. So now when we take a look at how it looks right now, we're going to see that it finally looks cool. Now let's add some text, but to space it out, we're actually going to add a sized box before we add the text, because sized box allow us to specify height, and the height that we want to have here is 5. So we're going to have spacing of 5 logical pixels between the aspect ratio widget and the text widget. and this text will contain video, not size box, but video snippet.title. And then we want to set the max lines of this text to be 1, just to make sure that we are not creating 3 lines, because some titles can be really long, but it would look really horrible inside a cart. And now, because we have max lines to be 1, we also need to set up overflow. So basically, when you have longer text, we want to somehow cut it, and we are going to use text overflow dot ellipsis. You can also use fade or clip simply. Now let's take a look at how it looks like. So yeah, because I have some really long titles. For example, this one, yeah, Android Kotlin Forecast App 03, local database, and then 3 dots. Now this text is pretty small, so we need to style it again. We're going to set up the text style. So basically just style will be equal to text style. And this text style will specify font weight. And the font weight will be font weight dot bold again. And then font size will be simply 25 logical pixels here. Let's take a look at how it looks right now. It looks pretty cool. Then the last thing that we want to have inside each of these cards is a size box to space out these 2 texts, because the next text that will follow here is a text containing the video snippet description. And now, when we take a look at how it looks like, we're going to see that it looks like just like it does in the example app right here. And that's it for this video. So you learned how to build a paginated list view in Flutter with real data returned from a block, which in turn gets it from a repository. If this video helped you to understand how to build paginated list views with real data, give this video a like and also share it with others. If you don't want to miss more tutorials like this, subscribe to this channel and also become a part of the notification squad by hitting the bell button so that you are not going to miss any of my new videos. Leave a comment if you have anything to say, any suggestions or questions or really anything. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter, and I'll be happy to see you in the next video.